I would like to thank for this wonderful opportunity. I will present you today my experience on intraoperative OCT and all the situations when OCT guided and I followed. So let's start with the guidance of OCT in peeling membranes. Why peeling needs OCT at all? Well, the retina is transparent. The membranes are transparent, and so how to distinguish one from the other? We can easily distinguish the retina from the choroid because the choroid is colored, but membranes are transparent, and in this example I am finding the plane of separation between membranes and retina, but not all the cases are as straightforward as this one. Even in this case, you can see I am peeling the edges of the membrane that probably partially was peeled during posterior vitreous detachment. You can see the staining of the edges and then partially the membrane. The view through the microscope is excellent in this case, and we can distinguish the epiretinal membrane and the surrounding internal limiting membrane, but while staining is a good help, it does not solve all the problems. So how to see when there is no contrast, when we have to verify the position of an ILM flap under air, how to verify the reaction of the retina in difficult peeling at risk of iatrogenic lesion. This is an example of low contrast for atrophic changes in the choroid in a case of macular hole and some macular degeneration. On the right, the in-focus OCT shows exactly the position of the hole and the ILM on top of it. We surgeons know that under air the view is more difficult. So if you add atrophic changes and air, being assured of the position of the ILM flap is even more difficult, but the intraoperative OCT will tell you exactly if the hole is closed and if the ILM is on top of the hole. These two peelings seems the same. We are peeling an epiretinal membrane at the posterior pole in two different eyes, but you will see that the one on the right is inside this type of fundus. The one on the left is in this type of fundus, which is totally different, as you can imagine. This is a man that can see only through that central island of choroid. After retinal detachment, he developed a bad gliosis and his vision went down to 0.1. I have been waiting for 1 year before deciding to operate, but then his vision was decreasing. It was the only eye. He was desperate and I decided to peel. I was not at ease, as you can imagine. While I was peeling, I was wondering if I was detaching the macula again, creating holes. I was wondering if I was peeling too much or if I was peeling at all. And of course, the view through the microscope is helpful, but cannot answer all those questions with certainty. And it was good to have an immediate answer from the intraoperative OCT. You can see that at first I am just caressing the retina. I was not efficient in my maneuvers, but then I started to peel effectively, and the intraretinal folds started to unfold. I could see that I was not making any holes nor detaching the retina, so I was more confident. In fact, here I can introduce a new concept. The microscope shows the movement, but the OCT shows the effect of the movement. You see that through the microscope you can see the movement of the forceps, while on the right you see the consequence of your movement, the unfolding of the retina and the aspect of the retinal surface without the epiretinal membrane. And this is the pre-op and post-op view of that specific case. This is another case of severe gliosis in a high myopic patient operated with vitrectomy and encircling buckle. She developed an epiretinal membrane. I could not make any mistake or making holes, and the intraoperative OCT was extremely useful. This is pre-op and post-op. So I would say that in peeling membranes, the OCT is useful when there is no contrast, when the light reflexes under air are intruding, and when we are afraid of inducing iatrogenic lesion with peeling. What about retinal detachment surgery? Well, in this particular point, the OCT is extremely useful, and let's start to see the behavior of the retina under different tamponates. Injecting perfluorocarbon liquid on the left, you see on the right that the retina is flattening and that the subretinal blood is squeezed out. Under air, I am reattaching the retina, exchanging PFCL with air, and as you can see, when the peripheral retinal brakes are flat, during the exchange of air, the macula detaches because there is some residual subretinal fluid that cannot be removed aspirating through the peripheral holes. It happens all the time, and you see the macula is detaching. And then, interesting, when I inject heavy silicone oil, the macula flattens again. It's almost when we inject a PFCL. We can exclude the presence of a subretinal PFCL even when we have turbulence of PFCL. We can always make sure that we don't have PFCL under the retina. And here, if you observe in details, the retina is flat under PFCL, but we can see the small wrinkles in the external retina, and that might explain the small bleb-like detachment that we observe even post-operatively. It helps deciding whether to peel or not to peel the ILM. You know that peeling might prevent secondary epiretinal membrane formation, but here the fovea was so thin that I decided not to peel. Instead, in this case, I decided to peel because the fovea looked thick enough. There were so many wrinkles, I decided to remove the ILM. And interestingly, you will see that even after removing the ILM, some wrinkles remain. I can see on the OCT side that some of the wrinkles might be induced at the level of the choroid and the RPE. And we can also distinguish schisis from detachment. Look at this difficult case of retinal detachment secondary to retinoschisis. In the first surgery, I did vitrectomy, removal of the inner retinal layer, encircling buccal and silicone oil, and this is the intraoperative view of the second surgery. There are many uncertain findings in A, B, C. A, I am wondering if it is a hole or a cyst. B, are they retinal folds, PVR, subretinal strands, and C, are those two subretinal PFCL bubbles? Well, the intraoperative OCT was a guidance to understand that A was a hole close to an intraretinal cyst, B were areas of schisis and remnants of the inner retinal layer that I had trimmed in the first surgery, again here, and C were not PFCL bubbles, but again areas of schisis, so I could decide not to remove them. So the OCT is very useful in retinal detachment because it offers information on the behavior of the retina with tamponates. It tells if there are PFCL bubbles under the retina, it differentiates areas of schisis and detachment, and it helps deciding whether to peel or not to peel the ILM. And in PVR, well, all the topic related to retinal detachment still apply, but also it helps locating the immature intraretinal PVR and to judge residual traction. So this is a very bad case of PVR, and in these cases we can easily see the epiretinal membranes, but I think this is worse. This patient came to me for a second opinion. He already had 5 surgeries for retinal detachment, and with the long scan OCT, you can judge the presence of a relapse, still an inferior retinal detachment under silicone oil, and this patient is very tired of surgeries. We cannot make mistake. So how to locate the immature PVR? I think this is a pathognomonic sign, the hyperreflective area with intraretinal folds. It's a sign of immature PVR. Again, in this point, you see that I am removing the epiretinal membrane that was highlighted with the OCT. You see, I have stained, but the staining is not so helpful, and even under the microscope, they could be just microfolds of the retina, but based on the information given from the intraoperative OCT, I am insisting in finding the membranes, and I finally find it and remove it. And even here you see the movements in the same spot with the tunnel scraper. I was trying to find the plane of separation of those membranes. I was caressing the retina. It was not enough as a movement to remove the membranes, and that's why I had switched to the forceps, as you have seen in the previous clip. How to judge residual traction? Can the OCT act as a tractiometer or traction detector? We all know that the greatest challenge in VR surgery is how to judge residual retinal traction. In a case like this, it's very subtle. Should we lift the retinotomy? Should we peel more membranes? Is there residual traction? It's not so easy to judge. So the edges of the retinotomy are minimally elevated and contracted, and there are epiretinal membrane when you look at the view of the intraoperative OCT. The edges of the retinotomy, even here, are contracted, and you can see the retinotomy is under traction and the retina is not completely attached. So again, I move on with more peeling and elevating the retinotomy and trying to relieve the traction. And as you can see here, on top is the pre-op, and on the bottom is after the maneuvers of flattening the retinotomy again and peeling more and more. Even here, the edges of the retinotomy are now relaxed, there are no more membranes to peel, and so I could judge that the case is finished. And this is the post-op view. And can the OCT be of guidance in high myopia surgery? Well, yes, in vitrectomy and in macular buckle we have useful information. Here you don't see the hole on the left, but on the right you can easily see the flap and the position of the flap inside the hole. And even here, even more subtle, you see that I am stuffing the ILM flap into the hole. It is very difficult to judge the location of the hole on the left with the microscope view. And this is the final view with the ILM flap on top. And even here, the macular buckle is positioned exactly under the hole, and the ILM flap is inside the hole. Under air, it will be very difficult through the microscope to see what we are doing. And this is a case where I implanted the buckle only with the guide of intraoperative OCT. There are no fiber optics inside, no endoillumination inside the eye. And you can see my coworker is pointing at the macula, which is indented by the buckle. And what about when we have no view preoperatively and we cannot perform any intraoperative, any preoperative OCT? Well, after removing blood, even in this case, we can do the OCT. We can see there is a hole that can be taken care of. So in summary, The advantages are that we have confirmation of what we see with the microscope and the ability to see what we don't see with the microscope. And therefore we add precision, speed, knowledge, we can do more research and training. So one step closer to perfection. To be able to see is to be able to do. Thank you.